Hi everyone and welcome back to Data Leaders. You'll notice last week I managed to take some time off, and I hope all of you had some time with your families and a break over the Easter weekend. Unfortunately, Friday this week we heard that His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh had passed away. And I certainly, as an Englishman and as a citizen of the United Kingdom, was deeply saddened to hear that such a great man had passed on. Of course, at 99 years, he had a fantastic life, and I want to be able to celebrate that and reflect on how much he contributed to British society and well beyond the borders of British society. Again, this video isn't about that, but I wanted to take a moment to reflect and also to honour what was a true leader in the true sense of the word of Britain, of the Commonwealth, and well beyond, and of course a strong and faithful husband to the Queen. And my heart also goes out to her and the rest of the royal family at this moment in time. So that's all I wanted to say. I wanted to pay my respects and have an opportunity to do that. And that's about all I'm going to say. We'll move on now to episode 9 of Data Leaders. Okay, thanks for that. And let me tell you what we have on the agenda for this week. So hope we're all rested. I certainly had a great rest. Not doing a video last week gave me a lot of time back over the weekend. So I'm thankful for that. I hope you didn't miss too much. And let's just talk about what we're going to go through today. I'm going to talk about and announce the Data Advisory Board, the Data Leaders Advisory Board. I'm really pleased to have some guys on board with me, guys and girls on board with me, most importantly, to help me through this journey and to be a really critical and important part of that. But we'll cover that in a second. As part of that, I'm going to restate the Data Leaders objectives, just so as you really truly understand why Data Leaders exists and what we're trying to achieve here. And then I'm going to recap the Ask Me Anything that I did on Revive. And I want to give you an introduction to Revive, because everybody in the data the data community should really be connected through Revive as much as possible. So I know the guys personally at Revive. I think it's a fantastic platform. I think LinkedIn is getting a little bit crowded. We'll talk a little bit about that. But we're going to get into it right now. So let's get into the content. So it's been a long time coming, and I have had to swap and move around and figure things out as we've been talking to people and industry leaders in the data domain to become part of what is going to be the Data Leaders Advisory Board. So let's just recap for a second on what Data Leaders really is. And I think it's just worth us doing a quick refresh. And I'm going to work with the Data Leaders Advisory Board on this specifically, but I thought it was worth us talking about it briefly today. So let's just show you a simple slide that talks about the objective of Data Leaders. And we will work with this with you, with the community, and with the Data Leaders Advisory Board over the coming year to make sure that we position what we're trying to do here for the community. And it's a reminder that this is a not-for-profit entity. It's not even an entity today, quite honestly. We are so early in this journey of connecting with all of you in the data community and building something really for the data community. So the objective of Data Leaders currently is as follows, and this will evolve. So it's never going to be static, but it will evolve. So to support the digital data and analytics industry. So that's everything from digital data, advanced analytics, simple BI, everything associated with getting data into the hands of users and improving the way we make decisions, grow our businesses, reduce cost, all of those things are covered in data, digital, and analytics. In working together to solve the problems that the industry faces, to operate at cost and reduce the cost of research for the industry. So once again, I want to emphasize, this is not a business. This is not a business venture from me. I have a full-time job. I have things to do. I have other things to do in addition to this. This is not something I'm doing to make money or to produce a new business of any way or shape or form. This is for you. This is for us, for the entire industry, to reduce the overall cost of things like networking, of things like knowledge sharing, and of things like research. And in particular, equally, we don't want to necessarily do the things that are already done by not-for-profits in the industry today. Generally speaking, we may well collaborate with other not-for-profits in order to produce and develop further research and further insight. But in particular, I really want us to focus on those areas of management and leadership in this space that are unique to this space. The roles, the structures, the way we operate, the way we're structured. And as part of that journey, to introduce new research and new technologies and other components that come along as they come along in order to meet the original kind of fledgling objective, which was to provide you with a way to consume information in a better, more efficient way. Going back to the primary reason I started this in the first place, which was I was spending enormous amounts of time trying to consume information, news, research reports, reading, and it took hours and hours and hours. And ultimately, it's much better if we can do that collectively and use new mediums like YouTube, like video, like podcasts, like simple curated content via a knowledge base, which ultimately we would like to get to, through a concept that is done not for profit, for the industry. And that's really why this exists and why we're here. And I wanted to refresh that and make sure that you understood why we were doing what we were doing. So I'm really pleased to introduce the Data Advisory Board, Data Leaders Advisory Board. And I won't go into each and everyone's profile. Actually, I'm going to perhaps invite each of them on the channel to introduce themselves, if they're willing to do that, of course. So the Data Advisory Board is made up of a diverse set of people from different backgrounds, in fact, across the board. And I wanted to have the right mix of, transformation, recruitment, people, technical and data literacy expertise, and product expertise across the board. So really that was an important mix for me in terms of forming the advisory board in the first place. So the advisory board are Kyle Winterbottom, Gabriella Phillip, Pete Youngs, Camilla Bjorkvist, and Shiraz Saeed. And we will introduce you to them in the fullness of time. And once we've had our first inaugural meeting, we will start to produce outcomes of that, so as we keep you up to date with how we're producing the community and how we're leading the community forwards, and some of the new initiatives that we are looking to do. And some of the first things we're really looking to do is expand into new platforms. So one of the important ones, I think, is going to be Clubhouse. So I think we want to be doing more live interactive events where you can interact with us and we can have much more of a conversation on that platform. So that's one of the places we want to expand to. We've also recently set up Facebook channels, Twitter channels, but more on that as we finalize the setup of those and launch those to the community overall. So hope you're looking forward to that. Quick update on the channel. I think it's worthwhile, and it's great to have more people with me driving this journey for the industry. And like I say, we'll keep you updated as we move forwards. So coming on to the next point, I'd like to provide an introduction to Revive. And Revive is a brand new platform that I would encourage you to get on. Now, LinkedIn is great for a lot of things, and it has a great and broad community. But for data leaders and people who are interested in data specifically, there is a new way of interacting and a new way of connecting with your peers, and also for those who are interested in it, who might be at the beginning of their careers, to connect with mentors and to make sure that you have a mentor through your journey from a data perspective. So two things I would encourage, if you've been in the industry a while and you would like to become a mentor, then please connect with the Revive platform and give something back to the community, particularly the new entrants to the data space coming out of university and perhaps spending their first few years in their jobs and forming a view of how they're going to move through their careers. I think it's really important that we connect to them, and that we provide bi-directional conversation around some of the challenges they may face, particularly in their early days, and particularly through this period of COVID. A lot of the people I've spoken to have had real challenges through this time. So really encourage you to get on there as a mentor, or get on there as as part of the data community. Secondly, I ran an Ask Me Anything, an AMA, last week, and unfortunately we had some challenges recording it. So what I'd said to the guys at Revive is that I would do just a brief recap of some of the questions that were asked there, and we're going to do that for the rest of this video to make sure that people can see the answers to the Ask Me Anything, and they're not scripted. I'm going to go through these and fire off the hip ultimately on these questions once again, and I just hope that my answers are somewhat in line with the answers I gave the first time. I'm sure they will be. So let's get into that and talk about what the individual questions were from the Revive group. And we didn't get them all. I just picked up the ones that were actually commented in the so if you've got additional questions you might want to ask me, get over to Revive and ask them in the data section of Revive, and I'll be sure to answer them, or perhaps even bring them back to the next video we do in episode 10. So feel free to get over there and ask any questions that you might have. Okay, so first of all, I want you to be aware of Revive and what Revive is. It's currently in beta, but if you go to revive.tech, then you will reach the first page of the site, and you will need to request to join. Once you've requested to join and you've been approved and you can join, you're going to need to log in, and I'll show you what that looks like right now. So once you've got the screen up and you enter your email, or you can use your LinkedIn ID to just log directly in. So I would recommend that because it links directly nicely with your LinkedIn site. And you'll need to register either as a member or as a mentor. So make sure you select the right process in that context. So revive.tech, you log in, and then what you see on the left-hand side is you see your communities. And the communities are specific. They're most likely not going to change significantly over the period of time. You can see down the left-hand side, general, engineering, product, data, of course, and design. And therefore, for the audience that is probably watching this video, data is the right place to go. So if you go into the data community, then you can start to see the individual posts of people who are engaged in the data community and are connecting on the Revive website. Also, there are ways to meet champions. So if you click at the top, if you see in the left-hand side, you can see Meet Champions, and you can meet individual champions in this space, and you can see their profile, and ultimately you'll be able to arrange mentor briefings with them, start a conversation, or book a session. The other thing to look at is just always just click home to see the general community. And on the right hand side, you always see that you can discover opportunities, start conversations, or meet champions. So I really encourage you to have a look around here. This is where I did my AMA this week, or last week, should I say. And it's a thriving and growing community. And it's important, I think, for us to give back from a mentorship perspective. But also, like I say, if you're just joining the data community, if you're just coming into your first role, also for you to jump on here and start connecting with others like you, but also with us as mentors, to be able to get the benefit of experience and the advice that you might need. Some simple things like career advice and people who want to know how to approach their boss with certain questions, ranging from that all the way through to the more technical questions. So take a look, have a look over here. It's really cool. I'm certainly heavily involved in this community and will continue to be. And I think the more people, the more data leaders we can get on here, the better, more generally for the community overall. Okay, so that's Revive. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to touch on 4 questions that were raised in the AMA this week. So for the 4 questions, first of all, the first question that came along was, what is the day-to-day of a chief data officer in an enterprise organization? So it varies, quite honestly. Okay, so if you consider the breadth of things that a chief data officer has to consider on a day-to-day basis, they're vast in terms of setting the strategy, in terms of engaging with the board, in terms of understanding the overall business strategy, and then understanding how to cope with transformation and the overall transformation of the organization. And that is a complicated component. And it depends on the maturity of the organization that you're in terms of the types of things you're going to be doing. If you're a brand new chief data officer in a new organization, first in the seat, there's going to be a lot of formative work to do to work around communication and allowing the organization to understand why you're there, but also building with the organization what it is that the opportunity looks like. So whether that be top down or bottom up, and it's probably both, really looking at the overall market, the overall opportunity for digitalization, for data as a component and asset, assessing how much data is in the organization, where it is, and forming a strategy together with the board and your stakeholders around how you're going to leverage that asset and where the gaps might be that you might need to build in order to get better data, more data, or buy data in to serve the individual use cases. So you need to build that portfolio of use cases. You need to build a strategy around that, and then communication around how you're going on that journey, how the journey is going to get funded, how you're going to build data science capability in the organization, how you're going to build foundational capability in the organization around things like master data, around data excellence and quality, around data pipelines. So there's a tremendous amount of strategic work which will go on, and then once you've got that package, you then need to start thinking about what is the operating model, or how you're going to build your team, what are the roles in that, and how do they engage with the organization more generally. Now let's just consider if that's all set up originally and you're picking it up, then there will be a cadence associated with meetings, in terms of there'll probably be a data board, there'll probably be other governance forums, there'll probably be other parts of the organization that have governance forums that you're going to need to be present in. So as you connect to the organization, the different governance forums across the board. So I think, that broadly, so a day in the life will vary. It will vary depending on what projects you have ongoing, what parts of the organization you're interacting with and engaging with, and which governance forums you're involved in, how often you're updating the board in terms of your strategy, how often you are working directly with your team, so your leadership team meetings, and what updates you're getting through those leadership team meetings, broader general communication. So for instance, quite often I would do a weekly or a bi-weekly podcast or a video like this to engage with the broader teams, depending on the size of the organization and how geographically spread they are. And then really looking at individual execution of individual projects, potentially deep diving on problems, and of course removing obstacles and dealing with the political components that exist in an organization to make sure the wheels continue to turn, engaging with peers and colleagues across the senior levels of the organization to make sure you're continually aligning and adjusting as you move forward. So I think that's a bit of a snapshot. It's going to vary significantly. The next question is, what about data breaches? What tools do you put in place to prevent data breaches? Have you ever faced one? And what was the outcome? Well, Tools wise, generally speaking, it's process that the chief data officer puts in place around data breaches together with the data protection officer, and that's probably that's a partnership that exists between the chief data officer and the data protection officer. Now, it's not always the chief data officer who deals with data breaches. Quite often, it's the DPO that deals with those data breaches. In terms of tools, though, that again is usually the responsibility of the CISO. And again, I'm reflecting on my own experience, which is in international large organizations that have these roles. I think in a smaller organization, then the chief data officer may need to concern themselves even more around tool selection and process and the legalities of data breaches. So it's not something that dominates the chief data officer's time, certainly in large enterprises, but they must be aware of the processes, and they are usually involved in the event if it comes along once the organisation is established and the connection with the data protection officer is established, of course, and the CISO, of course. So in terms of having faced one, yes, I've faced a few. Thankfully, touch wood, they've only ever been small and of a very small nature in terms of someone accidentally sent an email to the wrong person within the organisation. Thankfully, never outside of the organisation. But sometimes data has been exposed to people via email in the wrong way, and we've picked up on it and been able to resolve it, usually through self-reporting and by having the email deleted and the issue corrected. So, thankfully, I've never been at the end of a serious data breach, a massive data breach. Touch wood, I hope I'm never part of that either. I didn't catch that. Siri trying to talk to me. So, do you feel like chief data officers are getting more and more important? Really a key part of digital strategy. I think data is becoming more and more important. And by definition, of course, the people who are responsible for driving that from a strategic perspective at senior levels in the organization naturally also become more and more important. I think it's a natural process. So yes, I do believe that chief data officers, chief digital officers, chief data and analytics officers, all of those roles are becoming more and more important, particularly to the board in terms of driving the important components of digitalization, digital strategy, because those things are not options anymore. They're really not things that boards can consider not to be important in any case. So yes, and I think it will continue, which leads us on to the last question actually that I'm going to cover in this short reflection of the Ask Me Anything, in terms of where do you see the CDO evolving over the next 10 years and what are the key skills in becoming a data leader. I could probably do a whole half-hour session on the skills, so I won't dive into that too heavily. Let me first of all talk about where the CDO is evolving over the next 10 years. And I think this largely depends on the success of the role more generally. So if we're successful in getting this right, then the CDO that has kind of a centralized organization today, their organization size, I believe, will have peaked within the next couple of years. I don't see that there's an ongoing need for significantly large chief data office organizations because the foundational elements should be put in place that will allow chief data organizations to be much more federated and to federate the key components that don't lend themselves naturally to being centralized. So those key components are analytics and data science predominantly, although I suspect there will always need to be some kind of center of excellence around analytics and data analytics and data science. But I think it won't need to be huge. A lot of the value in data analytics and data science is being very close to the business outcomes, the business value. And in that context, I expect to see much more of those resources flowing towards proximity with the business itself. Some of the things that do lend themselves to being centralized are things that you expect to see one version of, and that's things like MDM, central data governance capabilities, and data quality monitoring at a broader scale. But again, you don't expect to see huge organizations in that context. Even data governance is by its very nature a very federated capability. You want to have data owners and data stewards that are in the business, not necessarily in a centralized capability. Monitoring, oversight, advice, strategy should continue to be centralized and close to the board, but the actual functions will continue to federate over time. I think there's a natural tendency for organizations to centralize first to get their arms around it, but as you mature, then you sort of breathe in, centralize, and then breathe out, and move things back towards the federated ends and closer to the business. So I think the CDO will evolve over time to be a much smaller, centralized organizations with tentacles into the organization overall. There'll probably be dotted lines into the organization to make sure that there's a connection to the strategy and the collaboration that's necessary to continue to have consistency of data across the organization where it's required. That doesn't mean consistency across the organization is an objective in itself. It should only be an objective where there is a necessity for that for a business purpose. Okay, and they tend to be finance risk-based purposes and things that you want to do at an enterprise level. So I also see the CDO role evolving and being much less of a technical capability. I think over time, the CDO role has sort of grown out of data governance and is in setting up infrastructure, and shifting the organizational infrastructure to a point where it can cope with the objective that it's there to achieve. And over time, it will become a much more business focused role. We'll also see the CDO becoming a more senior role and reporting directly to business leaders, including the CEO of the organization. So within 10 years, I expect to see many more CDOs reporting to the CEO and sitting at the top table of the organization. And across the business, if you look at large businesses, then CDOs will be reporting to general managers and business leaders in the individual silo components of an organization. In terms of skill sets, they're broad. I think it's a whole entire different video, but I think having an analytical mind, understanding what analytics really means, a good understanding of statistics. Even if you're in a data management function, I think a good understanding of basic statistics is important, because you need to be able to look at the data that you're managing and analyze what's happening with it. A good foundation of understanding how data is managed in terms of process, stored in terms of storage and structure of data models, a good understanding or a reasonable understanding of ETL and ELT, of semantic models, of data structures. I think I've touched on that a little bit, of data quality and how you manage and identify data quality, and then how you prepare data for analytics, and then the analytical process, data visualization, storytelling, all of those things come in. So there's a wide array of knowledge that you need in the data space just to become a data leader. But then there are a number of others which are really leadership and management principles, which are how you set up structures, how you engage with the organization, how you tell the story, influence and convince people around what the value of data is in its own right. Industry knowledge is critical in the industries that you're in or that you're going to operate in, and financing and transformation skills are also important. So understanding agile, understanding how transformation happens within an organization, understanding how projects get delivered and how you iterate, how you form squads, and how you fund transformation overall. So and again, that's an entirely separate video, but also how you work with HR to attract talent, to retain talent, to build career journeys. So the number of skills are quite vast, And what I would suggest is certainly early on, you pick an area of specialism and then you start supplementing that with the components that sit around it. So, if you're a data scientist, you're clearly going to have some level of engineering skills. You need to start to supplement that with human skills, with knowledge of the organization, with connections and relationships, and then start to think about how you execute and the elements of execution. You need to start operating within a squad and then start to think about how you lead a squad and go on that journey. So there are a vast number of skills, and probably could do 3 or 4 more videos deep diving in each of those areas. So I think that's probably enough for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed the small Ask Me Anything component. That was just 4, I think, questions out of many that we had on the AMA. Perhaps I'll do another one actually, because I think they're really useful, really valuable, and great to be engaged and engage with the community through Revive. Leave me any comments below. Make sure you subscribe, tick the little bell so you get notified, and we will see you in episode 10 next week. All right, take care, guys.